Who knew Parkinson's could leave clues in places that nobody would ever think to look? One of today's mysteries begins with something you may notice in the mirror. Another one begins with a routine appointment that has absolutely nothing to do with neurology. And the final one? Well, it connects Parkinson's with a serious condition that seems to belong in a completely different medical universe. Carmen is also back with another care partner's Who Knew, and hers begins after the lights go out, when the person with the possible clue may have no idea that anything's happening at all. Now, I'm not giving you any answers yet, but by the end of this episode, Parkinson's will have wandered through the skin, the eyes, the bedroom, and somewhere else that nobody invited it. So stay with us and keep your guesses coming, and let's see which reveal makes you say the loudest, "Who knew?"
Welcome to Living with Parkinson's. The good, the bad, and the reality. Real talk, real life, real community with Bryce Perry. Let's begin.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Bryce, and I was diagnosed with Parkinson's at the age of 40, and I've been living with it now for almost 16 years. And because this is the third week of the month, it's officially Who Knew Week. And this is where we take strange research, hidden symptoms, and unbelievable Parkinson's connections and explain them in a normal human language. No miracle cures and no panic. And keep track of which reveal surprises you the most, because I want to hear your vote at the end. And if you're ready, here we go. Here is number one. The first mystery begins with something many people see every single day. It may come and go. It may become worse with heat, spicy food, stress, sunlight, or certain skin products. The face may flush. The cheeks or nose may become red. Tiny blood vessels can become visible. The skin may feel hot, sensitive, irritated, or almost as if it's burning. Some people develop little bumps, and others have dry, gritty, or irritated eyes. Now, most people would naturally think this belongs in the dermatologist's office, and they'd be right. So why would researchers studying Parkinson's care about it? Well, one condition is visible on the surface of the face. The other affects dopamine-producing cells deep inside the brain. They do not appear to live in the same medical neighborhood. One belongs beside creams, gels, and eye drops. The other belongs beside medication schedules, movement tests, neurologists asking you to tap your fingers while they watch as though your fingers have committed a crime. But researchers in Denmark looked at health information for more than 5 million people, and they found a surprising pattern. You ready for it? Rosacea. Who knew? Rosacea. The common skin condition people normally connect with flushing, redness, and sensitive skin. In that national-wide study, people diagnosed with rosacea had a higher rate of developing Parkinson's than people without it. Parkinson's was also diagnosed somewhat earlier on an average in the rosacea group. And when researchers looked at people whose rosacea involved the eyes and the eyelids, the connection was even stronger. Now, everybody step away from the mirror. Rosacea is common. Parkinson's is far less common. Most people with rosacea will never develop a Parkinson's, but the study has found an association. Researchers are looking at the inflammation and the immune activity. They've studied enzymes involved in breaking down tissues and proteins, and they've considered biological pathways that may be shared by the skin and the nervous system. There may also be factors hiding inside the numbers that researchers haven't completely separated. And that is what makes this a true who knew. Something visible on the surface of the face may be sharing a biological conversation with something happening deep inside the brain. The body is one enormous group chat. The brain, the skin, the gut, and the immune system are all talking. Apparently, we are the only ones who did not get the password. And I think a lot of people will hear Parkinson's and picture one small area of the brain failing to make enough dopamine. And that's part of it. But Parkinson's does not stay inside one tiny little box, does it? It affects sleep, digestion, mood, blood pressure, smell, movement, and more. The systems communicate. So maybe we should not be completely shocked when research finds a clue in another department. But I'm still shocked because nobody hears facial redness and thinks, could that be Parkinson's? Now, if you have a rosacea, don't panic. Treat it appropriately. If your eyes are involved, make sure that they are assessed properly. And do not assume the study predicts your future. It doesn't. The point is simply that researchers have found a connection strong enough now to dig even deeper. Who knew something people usually treat with creams or eye drops would ever show up in Parkinson's research? Well, if that surprised you, put rosacea in the comments, or just put red if your if your autocorrect has already decided rosacea is not a real word. Okay. All right, number 2. The number 2 does not begin with something that you can see in the mirror. It begins with something a machine may see at the back of your eye. Now imagine you go in for a routine eye appointment. You sit in front of a machine. You put your chin on that little plastic rest, and the technician says, "Don't blink." And immediately, blinking becomes the only ambition your body has left. A detailed scan is taken of the back of your eye. Nobody asks you to tap fingers. Nobody watches you walk down the hallway. Nobody asks whether your medication is on or off. This is not a neurology appointment. It's an eye appointment. But the retina is part of the nervous system, and it contains layers of nerve cells. And unlike the brain, those layers can be examined quickly, painlessly, and without surgery. Now, researchers began asking a really fascinating question. Could changes connected to diseases of the brain be visible in the eye? So they examined enormous collections of retinal scans and connected those images with medical records collected over many years. They were not looking for something obvious enough for a person to see it in the bathroom mirror. They were looking for tiny differences in the thickness of particular layers inside the retina. And guess what? They have found a pattern among people who later went on to receive a Parkinson's diagnosis. Ready? The reveal is that an OCT eye scan can show Parkinson's related retinal changes years before the disease is clinically diagnosed. Who knew? In the study, the differences were found in scans taken an average of about 7 years before people presented clinically with Parkinson's. 7 years. Parkinson's may have been leaving a clue at the back of the eye while everybody was still waiting for the hand, the foot, or the walking patterns to make the official announcement. The scan is called optical coherence tomography, or OCT, and it uses light to create an incredibly detailed cross-section of the retina. And researchers found thinning in particular retinal layers. Now, I could tell you the full names, but then we'd need a second episode just to learn how to pronounce them. But the important part is that the differences were subtle and appeared across very large collections of scans. Now, here come the breaks. The OCT scan cannot currently diagnose Parkinson's all on its own. An optometrist cannot, point at one picture and say, "There it is, your retina's spoken, you have Parkinson's." So why is this exciting? Well, because these scans are already happening in ordinary eye clinics every day. They're quick, they're non-invasive, and they are easier to access than many neurological tests. If future research confirms a reliable Parkinson's pattern, an eye scan might one day help identify people who need a closer look. Not diagnose them in the optometrist's chair, but flag them for a better conversation and a referral to a neurologist. And early detection matters because Parkinson's begins long before the day someone finally hears that diagnosis. By the time the movement symptoms are clear enough to name, the disease has already been underway for a while. Now, this is one of the hardest parts of Parkinson's. You can spend years knowing something's changing without having a name for it. Maybe the sense of smell changes. Maybe constipation appears. Sleep gets strange, and one arm stops swinging. Handwriting becomes smaller, the voice becomes softer, but every clue by itself can be explained away. An eye scan would not solve that on its own, but imagine combining that with all the other clues. The sleep history, the smell testing, the genetics, and more importantly, the person's story. One signal may not be enough. Several signals together may eventually help doctors recognize the patterns earlier. And apparently, one of those symptoms may be hiding behind the pupil. Who knew the eye doctor might photograph a Parkinson's-related clue years before the neurologist gives the disease a name? That's wild. Really wild. The eyes are supposed to be the windows to the soul, but apparently neurology has been peeking through the blinds. All right, if that one surprised you, put eyes in the comments. And if you ever heard of one of those OCT scans, let me know that too. You may have been sitting in front of a machine that researchers now hope could become part of a much bigger Parkinson's puzzle solving mechanism. Okay, now the final mystery is coming, and it connects Parkinson's with a serious condition that most people would never place in the same sentence. But before we get there, it's time again for Carmen. And Carmen's here today, and she has a Carmen's care partner who knew. All right, Carmen, take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm back with another Who Knew for the care partner. And this one happens when the person with Parkinson's may not be able to tell the story at all because, guess what? They're sleeping when it happens. Imagine the person beside you believes they are peacefully sleeping. The care partner may be experiencing a completely different production. There may be talking, shouting, reaching, kicking, swinging an arm. The person may look as though they are acting out of something happening inside a dream. Then morning comes, they wake up and say, "Hi, I slept fine." Meanwhile, the care partner looks as though they worked the overnight shift at a wildlife sanctuary. And here is the strange part. The person may honestly have no idea any of it happened. They were asleep, they may remember a vivid dream, or they may remember absolutely nothing. So when a doctor asks what happens during the night, the person having the symptom may not even be the best witness. The reveal? It may be REM sleep behavior disorder. Who knew? During normal REM sleep, the brain temporarily switches off most major muscle movement. You can dream that you're running, fighting, or being chased, but the body mostly stays still. With REM sleep behavior disorder, that normal muscle paralysis is reduced or it's missing. Parts of the dream can spill into physical movement. This sleep disorder has a strong association with Parkinson's and other neurological conditions involving, okay, I can't say the word, I'm going to try, alpha-synuclein. Trying. And it can begin years before the more recognizable movement symptoms. That means the care partner may witness an early neurological clue while the person experiencing it is completely unconscious. The first useful piece of medical history may come from the half-awake person on the other side of the bed saying, "You're doing something really weird again last night." Now, not everyone who talks, moves, or steals the blankets has REM sleep behavior disorder. There could be sleep apnea, there could be nightmares, there could be medications, and other sleep conditions can create similar stories. And stealing the blanket may simply be marriage. A proper medical assessment matters, sometimes including an overnight sleep study. But repeated dream enactment behavior should be discussed with the doctor, especially if either person could be injured. Care partners can help by writing down what happens, when it happens, whether the person's remembered the dream, and also please, safety matters too. Sharp or breakable objects may need to be moved away from the bed while medical advice is being sought. Who knew the care partner could become the sleep historian, eyewitness, and unpaid overnight security department? And if anybody is interested, Bryce's main thing is like he talks in his sleep, and there are stories I can tell you. Anyway, here's my Carmenism. If they sleep through the whole thing, somebody still has to file the report. And that's the care partner more often than not. I love all of you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, Carmen. And for the record, I've never fought an invisible bear in my sleep. At least, nobody's produced the footage. Now, if Carmen's statement sounded familiar, give this episode a like. There is another care partner watching strange nighttime behavior and thinking they're the only ones. And one click may help them find this explanation. Okay, it is time for the final Who Knew. Ready? Researchers have noticed something strange about Parkinson's and cancer. Across many studies, people with Parkinson's have sometimes appeared to have a lower rate of several cancers overall. But One particular cancer refuses to follow that pattern. It's the exception, and it is not a quiet exception. People with Parkinson's have been reported to have a greater likelihood of developing this cancer. And people with a history of this cancer have also been reported to have a greater likelihood of later developing Parkinson's. Two conditions affecting completely different parts of the body appear to be pointed towards each other. You ready? The cancer is melanoma. Who knew? Melanoma. It's a serious cancer involving pigment producing cells called melanocytes, most often in the skin. Now, Parkinson's primarily involves the loss of dopamine producing neurons deep inside the brain. Skin pigment, dopamine, dermatology, neurology. Why are these two medical files even sitting on the same desk? Well, researchers don't have one final answer yet. They have studied genes involved in pigmentation and cell function. They have looked at oxidative stress and proteins that help control how cells grow, survive, and die. They've also looked at melanin in the skin and neuromelanin, the dark pigment found in the dopamine producing areas of the brain. Now, those pigments are not the same thing, but researchers wonder whether shared biological pathways may help explain the relationship. For years, some people suspected levodopa because levodopa participates in chemical pathways related to the melanin. But the connection has also been observed in ways that are not neatly explained in levodopa alone. So, the mystery remains. And unlike some strange research studies, this one gives us something practical to do. Pay attention to your skin. Watch for a new mole or a spot. Notice something that changes in size, shape, or color, and look for irregular borders, bleeding, crusting, itching, or a spot that simply refuses to heal. Do not stare at every freckle until it asks for a lawyer, but do not ignore meaningful change either. Bring concerns to your doctor or your dermatologist and ask whether regular skin checks make sense for you, especially if you have other melanoma factors such as significant sun exposure, fair skin, many unusual moles, or personal or family history. Now, I want to be very careful with this message. This does not mean everyone with Parkinson's will develop melanoma. They will not. And it doesn't mean everyone with melanoma will develop Parkinson's. They will not. But it means that researchers have repeatedly found a stronger connection than they expected, and they're still trying to understand what sits underneath it. That is the who knew. A movement disorder and a skin cancer connected strongly enough that doctors are now comparing notes. You know, I've lived with Parkinson's for almost 16 years. I have talked about tremors and stiffness and constipation, sleep, anxiety, everything. But I did not expect melanoma to walk into the story carrying a file folder. This is also a good example of why awareness should not become fear. Fear says something terrible is going to happen. Awareness says there's a connection worth knowing, so I'm going to pay attention and get changes checked. One leaves you helpless, and the other gives you a next step. And I think that is the balance we need with stories like this. We don't ignore them, but we don't panic over them. We learn what matters, take the sensible next step, and keep living our lives. Who knew a changing spot on the skin and disappearing dopamine cells in the brain might share a biological conversation that science still cannot fully translate? That one surprised me. It really did. But now I want your vote. Which one made you say who knew the loudest? Was it the rosacea, the eye scan, Carmen's sleep reveal, or the Parkinson's and melanoma connection? Put your answer in the comments. And if the final one was completely new to you, just write, who knew? Okay, you made it to the end, so here's your Brycism. Parkinson's keeps leaving clues everywhere, except where the neurologist is looking. All right, there you go. That is part 2 of July's Who Knew Week. Remember, these stories are not reasons to diagnose yourself or live in fear, but they're reasons to stay curious, notice meaningful changes, and have informed conversations with your healthcare team. Hey, share this episode with somebody living with Parkinson's or caring for someone who is, not to frighten them, but to remind them that Parkinson's is bigger, stranger, and more connected than the brochure ever told us. Until next time, I want you to keep showing up. I want you to keep being real, and I want you to keep doing life today. Love you guys. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you on the next episode.